Infectious diseases physician Dr. Asok Kurup is here with us now. He also chairs the Academy of Medicine's chapter of infectious disease physicians. Welcome back to the show, Doctor. So, 10 new community cases reported today, and Singapore currently has 9 open clusters, including, of course, TTSH, ICA, and the Westlight Woodlands dorm. But help us put things in perspective, Doc. Do they point to a new COVID-19 wave in Singapore?
Yeah, thanks for having me. When you see me, it's always bad news, I guess. But anyway, I think that it doesn't yet point to a new wave. When we talk about a wave, then everybody gets the perception that it's going to be a major upheaval. We're going to go into a huge lockdown and so on. But I think that the fact that we are able to detect the clusters in the first place is a testament to the fact that we are going around doing a lot of detection, contact tracing, and isolation and quarantining. And so, in a way, it's testing our systems, which has already been there, tried and tested maybe for the last 1 year plus. So I think that we are in a better way that we are right now than before. And so what we are experiencing in terms of clusters is a kind of reflection of how potentially vulnerable we are, because no matter which country in this planet does everything possible, we are still as weak as our weakest link. Maybe some other country, for example, India right now, going through their hardship, and we are just as vulnerable in that context. We have to be mindful of that. So I don't think we are yet going into a huge wave of anything. I think that what we are experiencing is the way we have been doing our testing and isolation and putting all our patients and people who are on the Trace Together app. We have all these mechanisms in place. So I think it's in a good way that we are picking things up, and that, it's not being detected by way of people coming out with a lot more symptoms. We are actually picking up people who are asymptomatic, rather.
Doctor, let's talk about Singapore's first hospital cluster, as well as the largest so far. How would you describe what's being done to stem the spread from the TTSH cluster, which has grown to 35 cases today? Would you say the situation is under control or not?
I think that the authorities have done what they could to kind of contain the problem by way of mitigation, by way of identifying the affected individuals and contact tracing, shutting down the relevant wards, visitor restriction, and so on. I think the mechanisms are in place to mitigate the outbreak. We still have to be informed by a few more mechanisms as to how exactly this happened, and what actually we could have done to kind of prevent this from happening in the first place. But I would say that with the measures that have been put in place right now, I do believe that the authorities have things under control. But I will not be surprised if we pick up new cases, because it's part of contact tracing and more may be linked to this cluster. So I think that would be my perspective.
And Doctor, I don't know whether you can tell us this, but when will we be able to see, I guess, maybe a petering out of cases over at TTSH?
So I think that would depend a lot on how good the mechanisms in place are like right now, as well as a lot of things. For example, the community also has a part to play. I think it was kind of pointed out by a reporter today in the papers, in Straits Times no less, about how visitors were going about and they were eating, they had their masks off in the wards, and we can't accept this kind of behavior right now. And I think that we all have to be mindful in that regard. So no matter how we all point to, like, say, the authorities and let them do their thing, and they are supposed to kind of keep everything under control, the community and all of us have to play our part as well. We have to do everything possible. I think that we are maybe dealing with potentially more infectious strain. I think the genome sequencing is still ongoing, and we will be informed about that in due course. But I think that we are maybe having to deal with a more infectious variant, maybe one that has been imported from the Indian subcontinent. So all the more we have to be vigilant about that. In regards to containing it, I think that give and take a couple of incubation cycles we might be expecting a control within the next few weeks. I would put it up to three to 4 weeks, for example, 2 incubation cycles.
Right. Doctor, let's talk about public sentiment, because you mentioned that briefly as well earlier on. How would you gauge present public sentiment? Do you think people are generally prepared to go back, say, to a more restricted movement kind of arrangement?
I think that the way that COVID has been playing out around the world, we may not have a choice in this regard. I think that we have been quite fortunate because our measures have been successful all this while, but we have always been on the lookout for such clusters. And like I said before, I think it's a testament to our measures that are in place that we are able to detect all these clusters ahead of time. It's a manifestation of the tip of the iceberg phenomenon, because we know there are many more asymptomatic individuals out there, and we have to all play our part in mitigating social contacts to what is actually absolutely required. We should not be talking in the lifts. We should refrain from talking and interacting a lot in the MRT station or in closed confines, because the dynamics of COVID points to that. If you're out in the open and it's a well-ventilated place, then it's less of a concern. I mean, this is common sense. So people have to do their parts. And I think that, we can probably get things still under control, but we are still having to engage in a little bit of fight at this point in time.